Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody today. All right, we have a couple of things going on here. One is that we are today in the last lesson of our booklet on Proverbs. Next week, we're going to begin a booklet that is a study of the book of 1 Peter. The preaching theme that Danny Dodd is going to use next year is unashamed. In the book of 1 Peter, we have Peter writing to a group of Christians whose situation is not unlike ours today, which is they had been and I'll say like us in America today, because it's not like this all over the world. But Christians for a while in that particular place where Peter was writing, they had just kind of motored along, thriving without very much pushback. But suddenly, the culture was beginning to turn against them. Politically, socially, they were getting some pushback. And as Peter says, and it's likely to get worse before it gets better, don't be surprised if a fiery trial shows up. So that's a similar situation in which we live. Christianity gets some pushback from culture and from people who just don't see the biblical ethics and morality that we do, and even hold it against us because we do. So 1 Peter is a book for today. And Anthony is handing out those booklets so that you'll have that ready for next week. You can be prepared if you want to be prepared. If you want to just come in and open the booklet and see it, that'll be all right. But if you like to do preparation, then you can see the lessons that are ahead. This morning, though, we're going to be in our last lesson on the book of Proverbs, Wisdom for Living Well with Others. This year, others has been the preaching theme. The book of Proverbs is all about sharing wisdom. It is about how to live well in this world, that is spiritually and socially and economically and in relationship. So it's been a good study for us. I've enjoyed it a good bit. We're going to be on page 23 in our booklet. We're going to, if you are following in your Bibles, that's Proverbs 25. Beginning at verse 11, and today we're going to have some word pictures, some proverbial word pictures. But we do have some of our normal business to take care of. One of those is praying for our missionaries. So besides the booklets going around, we need someone to be carrying around our missionary care tablets. And we're going to be praying today for Richard and Holly Roselle with their children Lily, Ellie, and Gideon. And they are in China, in Hangzhou, China. But then besides that, of course, we are, and by the way, these clipboards, I hope you know all the motivations and the people behind that. Besides having a mission committee that decides about missionaries to support. There is at Levy a missionary care committee, and in the missionary care committee, we make sure things like this happen, that the church is aware of who our missionaries are, where they are, what their work is, their family situations, and so they receive care packages, they receive these notes. We just make sure they have the things they need to do the work that they do, and the things that they need encourage, sometimes it's physical things, but often it's just, we remember you're there, we love you, we appreciate you. If you need to talk to us. So this is a missionary care project, these clipboards, and it's been a really great thing on several levels. For one thing, it reminds us just how many missions this church supports and is involved with, and just by our presence and our giving, we we are a part of that. And by signing these cards, we're a part of the missionary care. They do respond well when they get this collection of cards, and they appreciate that. So that's what's behind that. So we're praying today for the Roselle family in China. But of course, we also are praying for the Pogue family. Alan Pogue. Alan passed away this past week. Alan and Sherry had been in France to do missionary care. That's what they were doing. And it was a shock to us this week with the passing of Alan. You'll note on the back of your bulletins, if you haven't heard already, there will be a memorial service in this church building next Sunday at 2 o'clock. So we remember them. And so we don't have the Roselles on the back of the bulletin this week because we elected to put a picture of Alan and Sherry there and remember them. But let's pray for all of these circumstances. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful this morning to come to a place where we are safe and warm. We can open our Bibles and be guided by your wisdom, your precepts, your commands, the examples of people of faith in Scripture. These enrich our lives, help us to keep the faith. We're thankful for that. We also recognize that there are places in the world where being a Christian is not such an easy thing, and there are missionaries that are doing good work for the kingdom, but sometimes in difficult places, sometimes just in places that are isolated. And they need to know that we are aware of them, we care about them, we love them, that they have our appreciation as well as the appreciation of heaven for what they're doing. And this morning we do pray for the Roselle family that is in China, that family of 5 that's carrying on a good work. And oftentimes in China that has to be done in less than public ways, but at the same time, it's a good work that goes on, and they're able to do much good in that place, and we're thankful for the good that's being done by many who are carrying the name of Jesus to those who need to hear it. We also are mindful this morning of the Pogue family. We have suffered brokenheartedness and have concern and care over the passing of Alan, for Sherry, and for their children. We admire the missionary care work that they were getting up and running, and we do pray as the family makes their way here that they'll know the love that this church has for Alan and Sherry and the children, for their long history here, their good work here. They are much loved, and may they know that and be able to rely upon our love as well as your love. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so if you're coming in, you need a book for next week. It's a book on 1 Peter, and that's going around. You can raise your hand if you need to, and Anthony will supply that. And then to participate in the missionary care, we have a couple of people passing around those clipboards. Let's turn in our hymn books to number 117. 117. God is the fountain whence 10,000 blessings flow. So this is a good Thanksgiving song, but it also fits the book of Proverbs very well. We're winding up our study of the book of Proverbs because Proverbs does give us God's guidance for our life, for our health, for friends and relationships. It helps us to be attuned to the heart and the wisdom of God. A life that's lived in godly wisdom is lived to His glory. It leads to long life and good days. So this is a great song for both the Thanksgiving season and for our study of the book of Proverbs. Number 117, just a couple of short lines in each verse, so we'll just do the whole thing. 117, God is the fountain whence. God is the fountain whence 10,000 blessings flow. To him my life, my health and friends, and every good I owe. The comforts he affords are neither few nor small. He is the source of fresh delights, my portion and my all. He fills my heart with joy, my lips attunes for praise, and to his glory I'll devote my life, the remnant of my days. I rewrote the third verse a little, but got that done. So have your Bibles open then to the book of Proverbs, chapter 25, beginning at verse 11. We have one book left, and somebody might as well use it that doesn't have a book. Somebody want a book? Saw your hand first. There we go. And if you need a 1 Peter book, Anthony, there are some more here if people need those on the front. That'll be next week. The book of Proverbs, chapter 25, verses 11 through 12 is our text today. And what we have are word pictures. The beginning of the passage and the end of the passage are in the literary form of simile. A simile is a comparison in which you use the words like or as. This is like that. So as the deer pants after the water, so my heart pants after thee, O Lord. Or using the word like. So we have these word pictures. They are, I think, very poetic. They're wonderful. They are beautiful. They are practical. They do impart wisdom to us and remind us of things that we need to know. So a simile is one thing is similar to another. And so it's like, one thing is like the other thing. So let's start with verse 11, Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Last week, we had a lesson on the tongue, and the exercise that we did at the end of the lesson last week, we took about 10 minutes to do it, was to go through every chapter of the book of Proverbs from chapter 10 to chapter 31 and show that there are passages about the tongue in every single one of those chapters, usually more than one thing about the tongue. When God addressed our lives and our relationships and what's good for us and how we bless others or hurt others, the tongue is a big part of that. So there's a lot of wisdom about the tongue. And so this is one of the verses that we mentioned last week when we got to chapter 25. This was the verse that we picked about the tongue because it is a wonderful and beautiful thing. It is a still life picture of golden apples, and that's put in a frame of silver and hung on the wall, and it just makes the room a more beautiful place. Or sometimes you may have seen that some jewelry, if you get some thin silver and etch some pictures into the silver, you can make a piece of jewelry that is of some decorative thing, some fruit. Likely in the days of the Proverbs, they thought a lot of pomegranates. So you could wear that jewelry, that silver jewelry that was of a beautiful piece of fruit. You could wear that around your neck. Again, it just decorated and enhanced the body. Well, when we use our tongue to say just the right thing at just the right time, then we make the world, we make the room that we're in at that moment a more beautiful place. And we enrich that particular moment with the beauty of that word. So we do want to pay attention to a couple of things. We want to pay attention to what we say, but we also want to pay attention to the circumstance in which we say it. One of the translations is a word aptly spoken. So aptly has to do, it is the right thing to say, but sometimes we just need to pick our circumstance and our time as well. Sometimes we miss those. Have you ever been in a situation where someone said something and about 20 seconds later, you thought of a good comeback? But you're 20 seconds late. You're not going to say it now. You're going to say, "Man, I wish I had, answered like that. That would have been the perfect answer. But if I say it now, it's just going to sound ridiculous." So sometimes our timing is off. But to say the right thing in the right tone to the right person at the right time is just a blessing. It makes the world a more wonderful and beautiful place. There's a little rule I have for myself, and it does apply to saying something and sometimes also to doing something. And it does come up a good bit in ministry, the doing part especially. Sometimes I wonder to myself, should I go visit that person? Should I go see that person? And I know that something has happened, and I think, well, should I go or not? Sometimes we do know there are circumstances to stay away from. We know not to go. Sometimes immediately we know we should go. But I have this little rule for myself. If I ask myself the question, should I or not, then I should. So, and it's the same way. It's the same way with words, especially a compliment, the kind of thing that's spoken of here, a word of encouragement somehow. And sometimes we are hesitant to speak, maybe especially to people we don't know so well. We know the circumstance they're in may be a difficult one, and we wonder, should I say something or not? Then a good rule is, if you're wondering whether you should or not, then do. Make sure that the content of what you say is apt, is appropriate, but speak good things to good people. It just enriches the world and enriches the room that is around us. Then there is verse 12 of chapter 25 in the book of Proverbs. It also has a like statement, so it's a simile. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Now again, we have a picture of something beautiful. Oh, someone wears a golden ring. It may be a ring that you wear on your finger. It may be, I think in this case, an earring would be an appropriate thing to think about, because we're talking about words. And so an earring would be a good thing to think about. Frankly, in those days, sometimes we think these days we're doing something that's never been done before, and so somebody wears a nose ring. We see a lot of those. Nose rings were very popular in old Israel. So that was a part of the jewelry and a part of the decoration. But a golden piece of jewelry on the body of a person was an enhancing thing and a beautiful thing. And so, just in the same theme of the word fitly spoken being like a picture you hang on the wall and makes it more beautiful, so also a gold ring or an ornament of gold is, and this is a little bit different, a wise reprover to a listening ear. Now, there's two parts to that. You have to have someone who's willing to offer a reproof. We probably need to have a good relationship with someone to do that. It needs to be somebody we know has a listening ear. And we need to think of ourselves in the receiving end of this. If someone tells us something and it's a reproof, we can do two things. One, we can soil up and get angry and say, why did you bring that up? Or we can say, well, I kind of needed to hear that, and I appreciate that you said so. I'm going to make some corrective here. But we are familiar with not appreciating that kind of thing on the receiving end. Sometimes Patty will give me a grooming tip. You got nose hairs hanging out of your nose. And my first reaction is, I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear you say that. But at the same time, that's a good thing to know if I hadn't noticed it. So, so I'll go take care of that. So there's that sort of thing. Look at the book of Proverbs chapter 9. This is not the only time the book of Proverbs addresses this kind of thing. Proverbs chapter 9, verses 8 and 9. This is the same thought. It's a little more expanded and detailed. Proverbs chapter 9, verses 8 and 9. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Remember what our proverb said about the listening ear? Some people you reprove, all it's going to do is make them angry and bounce off. So do not reprove a scoffer, he will hate you. But reprove a wise man, and he will love you. So we can think of ourselves on the reproving end. That's kind of where the proverb comes from. But we also need to think of ourselves on the listening end. Are we going to be a person who, in the light of a reproof, just gets mad and say none of your business? Or are we going to say, that stung a little, but I appreciate that you said that. I needed to know that. I needed to hear that. Verse 9, give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he'll increase in learning. So sometimes, the Apostle Paul told Timothy in his preaching to instruct, but also to reprove and rebuke. And people sometimes need to hear these correctives for life. And so we can choose how we say that. And there will be more coming in these similes about how to say some of those things that are more difficult to say. But we also need to think of ourselves on the receiving end, on the listening end. How do we respond to that? If it was for our good, then we should take it as our good. When I was in my 20s, it was just my second full-time ministry. The elders at church told me they were going to give me I think it was a 1-year review. It might have been my first 6 months review. But anyway, they were going to give a review after I'd been there. So I went in and I thought they might have something about doctrine or things in the community and with people in relationships where I was falling short. I remember they told me 3 things, but I only remember 2 of them. But one of the things they said was, when you're preaching, don't jingle the change in your pocket. Because I would preach, and they say, when you're preaching, don't jingle the change in your pocket. So the way I handled that was, at least for a time, I quit carrying any change, to church on Sunday. And I tried to remember also to keep my hands out of my pocket, because that's not necessarily a great look either when you're before a crowd. So, and they also said, and this one was a little bit more personal, but they said, one of them said, my wife says you need to wear a T-shirt. So, that was I'm talking like back in the early 80s. We were just coming out of the 70s. T-shirts weren't a big thing. And here I am, let's see, I'm 60, so that was 40 years ago. I don't think I've missed wearing a T-shirt in 40 years. Okay. So sometimes we need to listen and hear what's being said. And, and at the time I thought, well, that's not the kind of review I was expecting. Those seem to be some minor, rather minor things that could be overlooked. But they were, bothering people. And you could present better doing this. So we want to take the attitude of, as a wise person, I can handle a rebuke, and if I handle it well and it really is an improvement, it'll just make me better. I'll be wiser. So that's what the book of Proverbs is guiding us to. In verse 13, and this is sort of a but, because this was a rebuke. We've been talking about a reproof. But verse 13 says, like the cold of snow in the time of harvest is a faithful messenger to those who sends him. He refreshes the soul of his master. When it's been harvest time and it's been hot and the field work has made us sweaty and agriculture, whatever we're working with, has gotten all over us, then that first cold snap morning, this is like the cold of snow. And I think I mentioned in our book that it's refreshing like the first snow of winter. That's a refreshing thing. But in this proverb, likely it doesn't even have to snow. It's just the first cold day, the first cool day after a season of warmth. You've had the summer and it's been hot. Now you're into the harvest, and sometime in the harvest you get that first cool morning, and that's a refreshing thing. We know that feeling. So what this proverb says, that when someone brings a good message, that's the feeling that people get. It's just refreshing in that sort of way. We've been bumping along, doing difficult things without much encouragement, and it's been hard. And then somebody comes up and they just say, I appreciate you, I love you. They compliment us in some specific way, and it just refreshes us, and we have a better day. We woke up to something good when that happens. So again, think of yourself on the speaking end and on the listening end as we receive those things. Just this last week, I had a good friend in Fulton, Kentucky, the place where I came from. He retired. His wife had recently passed. He remarried. She was from Nashville, so he moved to Nashville. But he was a guy I just really enjoyed being around, always appreciated whatever he had to say. Didn't hear from him much when he went to Nashville when I was still in Fulton. He would come to town and visit every now and then, and we might see one another. That was always nice. But it's been a good long time since I've really even thought of him much. So just this past week, I got a text message on my phone, and it just said, Cecil, heard about your move, but I'm hoping that you still have the same Fulton phone number that I do. He said, I moved to Nashville. I still got the same number. So I just had this number in my phone. And he said, I just was thinking, he said, my wife just read a book, and she liked it a lot. And it was the book Crooked Letter. And I'm originally from Mississippi, so am I Crooked Letter. So Crooked Letter. He said, my wife just read this book, Crooked Letter. And when she told me she read that book, I remember that you told me that Patty read that book and really enjoyed it. And my wife did too, and it made me think of you, and I just wanted to say, hey, I thought of you today. I hope you have this number. That was a simple thing, but it was so refreshing, nice to hear. And we can do those things. And that's the kind of thing I was talking about when we can be in that situation. Roger might have thought, well, should I send this message or not? He may not even have the same number. We hadn't talked in a couple of years. Yeah, you should. And he did, and I'm glad that he did, and it was refreshing. Like the first cool morning after a hot summer. Then, in verse 14, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. There are, when we do things, we like for people to know that we've done things. One of the jokes about home life is that women may have some tasks that they do every day, unload the dishwasher, and in a lot of cases, the man never thinks about that until the one day in 3 months that he unloads the dishwasher, and then when his wife comes in, he says, "Did you notice I unloaded the dishwasher?" No. Well, she does that every day, and she doesn't say, "Did you notice I unloaded the dishwasher?" So we like if we've done something good, we like for attention to be drawn to. Well, in this particular case, here's a person, they like to make a boast, they just really haven't done anything. They haven't given anything. They haven't accomplished anything. But they still throw something out there like they are an accomplisher, a doer, a giver. They feel like somehow it exalts them to brag when they have nothing to brag about. And that does, when we notice somebody who does that on a regular basis, they brag about stuff we know they don't have anything to brag about in that area, then it is like when it's been really hot and you need a good rain, and then a cloud comes over. Oh, great! We're going to have this good rain. Here's this cloud. We're going to have this good rain, but then it doesn't rain. It just passes over. Well, this person is like that. And by the way, sometimes this can get really serious. Sometimes it's just irritating. Sometimes it can get really serious. I'm going to point you to the book of Jude. That's the book right before Revelation. Sometimes hard to find in our Bibles because it's generally just one page, but before the book of Revelation begins. But people who Jude describes as they are false teachers, a part of their falseness is that they put the focus and attention on themselves instead of on Jesus or the Word where it belongs. And this is one of the things he says about them. Jude, verse 12. These are hidden reefs at your love feasts. They feast with you without fear. Shepherds feeding themselves, and then get this next phrase, waterless clouds swept along by winds. Or another likeness, fruitless trees in late autumn, twice dead and uprooted. So this can get to be a serious thing in spiritual guidance. People can be, they may seem to have a strong personality, but they are not communicating anything that's helpful and good, anything that's they're not accomplishing, they're not doing, but they're bragging about what's going on in their own world. They are like the cloud that doesn't have any rain in it when we need the rain. So a verse that is anti-bragging. We don't want to be braggarts anyway, and especially when we don't have anything to brag about. Then beginning in verse 15, we don't have the simile form. It's not like this or that, but we do have still some word pictures. Verse 15 says, with patience a ruler may be persuaded, and this is quite the word picture here, a soft tongue will break a bone. When you think about your own body, our bones are hard, our tongue is soft, so how can a soft tongue break a bone? But the way that works is that gentleness does change a person, when we approach someone with gentleness, it can change their direction and who they are. It's a gentle thing that still breaks through a difficult circumstance. And so we are encouraged to be gentle, especially when we are talking to people who in some way at work or however that works in community, someone who outranks us somehow is superior at work, but they need to be persuaded on a certain point. Here probably is what is not going to work. But a lot of people, this is their go-to. Intimidation. Well, even if you've got a good idea and it's something that person needs to hear, you present it in a demanding and intimidating way, they're just going to back off of that. But even if you think, I don't know if they're going to be open to this or not, but it is a good idea, so I'm going to present it gently and patiently. Sometimes that breaks through. It breaks the bone when other things do not. Then there's this in verse 16. If you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it, which is just a simple proverb that says you can have too much even of a good thing. There's a story in our family, Patty's younger brother, when he was junior high-ish. Patty's mother had made a pan of Rice Krispie treats, and he came in from school and found those and ate the whole pan. And so he was sick later that evening, and now he is 45, 50 years old, and he hadn't had a Rice Krispie treat since. Okay, so and it's just that kind of thing. Rice Krispie treats are good, and they were so good he ate the whole pan, and now just the thought of it is not pleasant to him. So even things that are good, if we just indulge ourselves, gorge ourselves on too much of it, then that can be a bad thing. People enjoy the warmth of the sun. Stay in it too long and too intensely, you get a sunburn. So too much of a good thing is not good for us. If you have found honey, eat only enough for you. When I was in the Cayman Islands, I don't know if this is a Caribbean proverb. I never heard it over here. But in the Caribbean, it was a big thing. Their proverb was, enough is as good as a feast. And it communicates the same thing. Verse 17, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. This follows on the heels of that too much of a good thing, and there's a couple of verses here that are along that same theme. One of the things that can be too much of a good thing is our presence if we just overstay our welcome. Another proverb, this one gets attributed to Ben Franklin because of the work he did with Poor Richard's Almanac back in the days. But fish and guests stink after 3 days. So a guest, someone who's overstaying their welcome, we like these people, we love these people, but okay, it's you've been here long enough now, and so we need to have that kind of social presence about ourselves. We can be the thing that's too much of a good thing for another person. So just be socially aware and that kind of thing. One of the proverbs that actors, comedians use is, and this would be a good thing for preachers too. Y'all mention this to Danny Dodd, okay? Leave them wanting more. Okay, so that's a nice little proverb. Leave them wanting more. Then, verse 18. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club. Now we're getting back to the simile. Here's another like. Is like a war club, a sword, or a sharp arrow. The One of the proverbs that's used frequently but not true is, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Because we all know words hurt. And especially if it is a vicious lie, some sort of false witness, a tale, a rumor that has no truth to it, but it goes around, and of course people believe it. Even if they find it hard to believe, it makes them suspicious, and they react to us in that way. And that's why when we tell something on someone that's harmful and not true and spoils their reputation, we might as well have taken a club and just beat them with it, because it's that kind of effect. Verse 19, trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. So here is the untrustworthy. Sometimes we think, well, I'm going to rely on this person over here. Or again, we need to think of ourselves in the other end of that Proverbs. What if we are the person someone is leaning on? If we're not trustworthy, if we're not reliable, then what that is like is a person with a bad knee, and they're walking along and they take a step and they fully expect that their leg is going to hold them up and carry them to the next step, but sometimes it just buckles and you go down to the ground. Sometimes when you go down to the ground, you break a hip. So to rely on an untrustworthy person, this proverb does two things for us. One, it warns us about putting too much stock in the unreliable person, but it also reminds us we need to be reliable. We need to be trustworthy. People need to be able to count on us. Otherwise, it's like you've got a bad tooth that normally is something you can live with, but you just bite down on it. You bite down on it in the wrong way at the wrong time, and it makes you cry out in pain. And so when we are the untrustworthy person, someone else is counting on us, and we don't come through, then it hurts them like that. It hurts their situation. And then we get to verse 20, which is, whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day, and like vinegar on soda. The one who takes off a garment on a cold day, that doesn't make any sense. When it's cold, you put on it. That just doesn't go together. It doesn't work together. Just like the vinegar and the soda do not work together. That's the acid and the alkaline. And anybody who ever did the science project where you made the volcano that spewed, all that you were doing was you were putting acid and alkaline together, and it causes an explosion and a lava flow. Well, in the same kind of way, we need to take the temperature of the room when we walk into the room. Sometimes to come in bright and joyful and loud and with lots of activity, if that's the mood of the room, that's a good thing. But if the room is mournful and lamenting, something bad has happened, and we don't read the temperature of that room, and we come in and do the opposite, then it's just sort of a shock to the system of everybody that's there and not helpful. So again, this is just valuable information about being socially aware of the circumstances that are around us. And throughout these Proverbs, the words that we speak, the things that we do, the tone that we use, is it the proper time for a reproof or not? Is a compliment going to be helpful here? Have I overstayed my welcome? It's just being socially aware of other people, their feelings, their circumstances. And we want to be a people who enrich that and not detract from it. All right, so that's our study from the book of Proverbs that just helps us to live well with others. And that's a lot of what we were looking at today. If you came in late, we're doing 1 Peter starting next week. There's some books in front, or Anthony may still have some, and you can get that prepared for next week. Leon.
Yeah, as believers, we got a real problem if we do some of the things we just talked about, because God knows everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say one thing and it's not true, he knows that too. And so as a believer, we have to put our full force on doing the right thing all the time, not sometimes.
Yep. And that rumor, that vicious lie, that one's in the Ten Commandments, you know. You shall not bear false witness. Yep. All right, thank you.